Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Breakout, a show where we share campfire stories and best practices and how we can attend virtual meetings. Now, today on the show, we are very pleased to have alongside us Carol Lempert, a leadership expert who's been quoted in Forbes, the London Free Press, the National Post, as well as the New York Times, providing communication expertise and guidance to leaders all across the world. Carol, it's great to have you on the show with us.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today.
You have been part of many virtual meetings in the past as a facilitator, as a leader, and also as a participant. And these are campfire story opportunities, after all, right here in the Breakout. So would you like to perhaps give us an example of perhaps the strangest or most surprising virtual meeting you have attended or been a part of?
So I wouldn't say a particular meeting. Then I will caveat all of this as I never had a virtual meeting in my life until the pandemic hit. So I live just outside of Manhattan. March 12th was the day 4 years ago where Broadway shut down and we all went, oh my goodness, we have to stay in our houses. And March 13th was the day that a friend of mine emailed me and said, there's this thing called Zoom. Have you ever heard of it? So I had never had a virtual meeting until the pandemic hit. So that's I'll caveat all of that by saying. And then we all pretty quickly got ourselves upskilled. Within the first month, we were Zooming all over the place. And I was Zooming to birthday parties and, as well as work events, everybody was Zooming all over the place. I am shocked that 12 months in, people that I would imagine should have known better were turning on their Zoom cameras as if they had invited their client into their home on the most casual Saturday. So I had a woman who's a managing partner at a consulting company show up to a Zoom meeting with a full face of facial. She was doing a mud mask or something. And nobody knew whether to do you know your camera's on? Did you want us to see you like this? Are you really practicing authenticity at the furthest end of the spectrum? So that really shocked me that happened. And not that long after, I showed up to a meeting and a guy was eating full on steak dinner, in the middle of the session. He's talking to his team and shoving his face and there's stuff coming down his chin. So people got real casual with it. And I think that they didn't realize yes, you're sort of inviting people into your home. You can see my background, you're in my home office right now. But I do think that there's a level of professionalism that people just sort of gave up on, maybe because it was the pandemic. I don't know. So those two really come to mind.
Do you think over the years now, things have somewhat improved, or perhaps have we taken the reference of casual to smart casual?
Oh, well, that's interesting. I have seen, even just this last week alone, I had 3 or 4 different conversations with different clients of mine. A lot of companies have really defaulted to the virtual background. And some people are choosing the virtual background where they just blur it out so that nobody's actually looking into their home. They're just sort of seeing them in the virtual blur. But a lot of companies have branded themselves so that it'll be the logo of the company will be sort of living over my left shoulder, for example. So I think that they've figured out a way to say, let's smarten it up and let's look a little professional and let's take advantage of the fact when I'm in person, I can't walk around with the company logo hovering over my left shoulder. But virtually, maybe that's a powerful thing that I can remind everybody we're all part of this brand, company brand. Therefore, we should be living and espousing the company values. So I've seen a lot of companies make that decision lately.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and it's something we speak a lot here at MeetBee with regards to the impact we have in how we meet virtually. You and I are allowing our real backgrounds to be shown. And there are some studies. Harvard Business Review in 2020 during the pandemic also took a non-scientific poll around what kind of authenticity do you demonstrate when you either are showing your real background versus a virtual or blurred background. And several thousand people who did that poll, again, back in 2020, felt that at least, even if your real background isn't that well done up, it does demonstrate more authenticity as opposed to putting a virtual background, which could lead to having something to hide. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't think about it so much as I might have something to hide, as I personally visually find looking at someone who's sitting in a virtual background, I find it harder on my eyes. And I find it harder to kind of focus in on taking the gestalt of the experience of talking to them versus like, oh, they're okay, don't pay attention to any of this, although I can still see all of this and really only looking at their face. And I think there might be something to like the two dimensions of that. One thing that I thought a lot about, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, it's not like we don't know how to watch a screen. We've all seen thousands of hours of movies. We've all seen thousands of hours of television programming. And there's rarely a film or a television program that doesn't put the player who's in the scene in some kind of realistic environment so that the viewer kind of has those context signals to say where we are at that moment in time. So as you can tell, I don't have a virtual background. I have a bias toward just saying, here's my home office. Come on in. We're having a meeting together in my home office.
It's fascinating from a technological point of view. One may notice that when we do implement virtual or blurred backgrounds, it actually processes more on your computer. And that's the reason why the picture can become a bit more pixelated and blocky. And you also tend to find if you're wearing a headset or anything that might be sticking out, that's where the system struggles to identify exactly where you're at. So there are things to consider. Do you think, though, there's still a way to go in the way companies and professionals are interacting? And maybe as a question to you, what do you think they could do even more in the months and years to come to kind of bring that sense of humanness, the additional senses closer to one another, even though we are ultimately thousands of miles away from each other?
I think this goes back to the not only the authenticity, but the humanness of it. People schedule their calendars typically in 30-minute or 60-minute chunks. So I'm going to have a meeting from 10 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock with Mark, for example. And then I'm going to hang up from Mark at 11. But then my very next meeting is scheduled to start at 11. So but throughout the course of the day, we're always feeling like we're running late and we're running behind. And so I think what that's done, even though we're using the technology to be able to connect with someone in Malta, someone in South Africa, someone in Secaucus, New Jersey, we've left out all of those spontaneous, as I was talking about earlier, walking down the hall, coming into the boardroom. Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. How's it going with your kids? How's it going? I know you had a colleague move to Malta recently to join you. How's that going with your new colleague that's recently joined you? And so it means that leaders need to be more purposeful about making sure that there is time at the beginning of a call, at the end of a call, to do a little bit of how are you? How are things going today? I haven't seen you in a while. Rather than, okay, it's 10 o'clock. We got to get down to business, because then we're squeezing all of the relationship out of the relationship. And we're just having a series of transactions throughout the course of the day. And then it's not a surprise at the end of the year when employees do their engagement surveys, they find that their employee engagement scores are low. Their employee engagement scores are low. What engagement is measuring is the person's feeling about their relationship with their colleagues. And if I don't have time to have a relationship and I'm only ever going straight to the meeting and, okay, bye, here's my next steps, I think that is what is draining companies of people feeling really committed to the mission rather than I'm just going to show up and do my work every day. And hopefully I'll get a good performance review at the end of the year.
Yeah, it really, it's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. And this is what you do in your practice, and focusing on coaching leaders to communicate better, and I think ultimately build those relationships in a far more substantive way. As we wrap up, I'd love to hear another campfire story from you. And even though you've been spending time the last 4 years in a mix between virtual and in-person meetings, you've done a fair bit of traveling. And I'm quite curious as to what was one of the most exotic locations you had to take a virtual meeting, which wasn't this home office that we see in New Jersey.
So I often end up in hotels. So I'll be teaching in person on a Monday, and then first thing Tuesday morning, I might also have a virtual environment. And I think it's important that the background looks professional because I'm not someone that uses the virtual background. And typically in a hotel, the desk is set so that the thing you see right behind you is the bed. And I don't think that telegraphing to all of my corporate clients that, hi, I'm sitting in a room and here's my bed is the right subliminal signal to be signaling to people. And so I try to find somewhere else in the hotel room that looks a little professional. And 9 times out of 10, I end up in the bathroom. And I think it's important that the eye line of my camera is in line with the eye line of my eye. So if you just put your laptop down and you're looking down at your laptop, everybody's looking up your nose. I don't think that's a good either. So I have a whole system now where I take my suitcase, which is about this deep, and I put it on the counter in the bathroom. And then I put my laptop, because usually the bathroom has a really nice little picture or a little virtual thing behind it. And it's also got really good lighting because they've got good lighting for, women at least to put on their makeup and men to do a proper shaving job. So I'm looking at the mirror and I've put my laptop on my suitcase, which is sitting on the counter. And now I'm in the bathroom. The acoustics are great. The lighting is great. And typically there's a really nice little picture behind. So I do a lot of virtual meetings with the toilet to my left knee. And the client doesn't know that.
Well, now they do. So that
I'm coming clean.
you are coming clean, indeed. Carol, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you here on The Breakout. And thank you for spending some time with us, just sharing some stories, some of your best practices, and some of your experiences.
Well, I'm so delighted to have been invited to talk to you, Mark. Thank
So
you.
if you want to find out more about Carol Lempert, you can go to carollempert.com. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen. And Carol Lempert also happens to be one of our advisors right here at MeetBee. So for myself, Mark, as well as Carol, until the next time, make sure all those virtual meetings that you interact in are intentional. Take care. Bye-bye.